Hello, third grade, and welcome to Science for today. We will be looking at physical adaptations in our next couple of lessons. As we go along, please follow with me in your class kick. Now, we've been looking at different kinds of adaptations. We looked at behavioral adaptations and how animals will migrate or hibernate when the weather or certain parts of their environment changes. We will now be looking at physical adaptations. A physical adaptation is something that changes on the animal itself. Please follow along with me in your class kick as we organize these options into the correct boxes. Number 1, mimicry is when one animal looks like another animal to avoid being eaten. Think about any animals that you might know that mimic other animals. Number 2, some animals camouflage, which means its shape, color, or pattern allows it to blend into surroundings. Camouflage. And number 3, a blank is an adaptation that allows an organism survive by the way that their body parts function. Now that is physical adaptation. Now we're going to look at a couple of animals for our first activity and match them to their physical adaptation, how their body changes for their environment. Looks like we have some type of cat, some type of lizard, maybe like a buffalo, and some types of birds. This first one says the feathers change from brown in the summer to white in the winter to blend in with its surrounding. It wants to blend in so then it doesn't get eaten by predators. The spots. Spotted fur helps this animal blend easily into the jungle. Habitats full of both sun and shade. So that's why this cat has spots. Fat is stored in the tail to use for energy during times that food is scarce. That's how its body changes. And finally, the long, dense coat helps protect it from cold and wind. So physical adaptations are how animals' bodies change to help them adapt to their environment. Once you are finished matching all of these, then you can move on to the next activity, and we'll keep learning about these in our next science lessons. Hello, third grade, and welcome back to Science for today. We're going to continue looking at physical adaptations. Remember, before we looked at behavioral adaptations and what animals do to adapt to their environment. Now we're looking at physical adaptations, what their bodies do to adapt to their environment. This first activity, we're going to look at some birds and how their beaks are specifically shaped and adapted to what they eat. Please follow along in your class kick with me. This first bird has a really large beak, and that is for dip netting and catching fish. This second bird has a really long, sharp beak, and that is aerial fishing to spear fish. This next one has a really small beak to catch little things like insects. And finally, this last one has a large beak so it can tear and rip meat. Another type of adaptation that birds have are their feet. So the nails on birds, we call those talons. So sometimes those have a part in their physical adaptation as well. So this first one has really long talons and no webs in between its toes. That type of foot is good for grasping things. Grasping. This second one has long webs in between its toes and pretty small talons. Now that is good for paddling. This next one looks similar to the one that's grasping. Perching is when an animal stands, maybe you've seen birds perch on a telephone pole or a telephone line, and they hold onto it with their feet. So that would be good for perching. And finally, this one has small webs in it and smaller talons, and that would be good for walking. Now, animals adapt and they have forms and functions for their physical adaptions. We'll be learning about that more in our following lessons. Make sure your class kick is filled out and you can finish up the day.